6.26 1943. Occupied France airspace. 19,000 feet. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, 23 years old, sat in P-47 Thunderbolt cockpit, watching B-17 bombers turn for home after hitting Villacoublay airfield near Paris. 2 months combat experience. 1 confirmed kill scored 13 days earlier over Netherlands. Right hand gripping stick, left hand throttle forward, eyes scanning western sky where afternoon sun created perfect ambush position. Dark specks appeared at 25,000 feet. 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from 2nd Group, Fighter Wing 26, diving fast, coming from sun. Johnson keyed radio to warn flight leader. Never completed transmission. 20 millimeter cannon shells ripped through his P-47. Canopy shattered. Glass fragments filled cockpit. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across face, burning eyes. 7.92 Mulligan machine gun bullet nicked nose. Destroyed oxygen mask. Another bullet hit right leg. Fire erupted. Massive fighter snapped into inverted spin. He tried bailing out. Canopy wouldn't budge. Trapped in burning. Spinning fighter at 19,000 feet. No hydraulics. No oxygen. No escape. He resigned himself to death. Then fire went out. Starved of oxygen at high speed. Simply extinguished itself. This 90-second sequence would prove whether largest single-engine fighter ever built could actually keep pilots alive when pushed beyond all reasonable limits. What happened next changed how America understood aircraft survivability. How engineers designed fighters. How pilots trusted machines body. Watch what happens when 10,000 pounds of American engineering refuses to die. 6.1943 marked critical juncture for 8th Air Force fighter operations. P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat 3 months earlier. Results mixed. Aircraft massive. 10,000 pounds empty. 17,500 pounds fully loaded. Powered by 2,000 horsepower Pratt and Whitney R2800 double Wasp radial engine, armed with 850 caliber Browning machine guns, fast in straight line, deadly at high altitude, absolutely brutal in dive. But P-47 had one significant problem costing American pilots their lives. Couldn't turn with German fighters. Focke-Wulf 190 and Messerschmitt Bf 109 were lighter, more agile. Could execute tight horizontal turns that massive Thunderbolts simply couldn't match. In sustained turning fight at medium altitude, P-47 was at disadvantage. Against experienced German pilots, that disadvantage could be fatal. American doctrine said Thunderbolt pilots should never turn with German fighters. Never try outmaneuvering them. Use speed. Use altitude. Dive in, shoot, climb out, hit and run. Don't get caught in turning fight. Doctrine sounded good in briefing rooms. Combat was messy. Enemy didn't cooperate with American tactical plans. Sometimes pilots got caught in turning fight whether they wanted or not. 8th Air Force losing P-47 pilots since aircraft entered combat 3.1943. Learning curve steep. Cost measured in young lives. Official reports often said pilot error. Instructors said pilots weren't following doctrine properly. Pilots who survived knew truth. Combat didn't follow doctrine's neat patterns. 56th Fighter Group, commanded by Colonel Hubert Zemke, had been flying P-47 since 4.08 1943. Zemke understood aircraft's limitations better than most commanders. Didn't pretend Thunderbolt could dogfight with German fighters on equal terms. Instead developed tactics exploiting P-47's actual strengths. Zemke's tactical innovations emphasized altitude advantage. P-47 climbed well, performed beautifully above 25,000 feet, where supercharged engine delivered maximum power. German fighters, optimized for lower altitudes, struggled matching Thunderbolt's high-altitude performance. Second innovation, dive tactics. P-47's massive weight and powerful engine meant it dove faster than any German fighter. Pilot could dive from altitude, fire burst, continue diving away before German fighters reacted. Boom! Never sustain engagement. Third innovation, mutual support. Thunderbolt pilots flew in pairs. Wingman protected leader. Leader trusted wingman. German pilot trying to follow diving Thunderbolt exposed himself to wingman's guns. German pilot trying to attack wingman got leader's attention. Tactics forced Germans into defensive positions. But tactics required discipline. Discipline required training. Training required time. 6.1943, many P-47 pilots were still learning, still making mistakes, still dying. Still dying. Robert Johnson flew tail-end Charlie position that afternoon, last position in squadron formation, most vulnerable spot. Position newer pilots often got assigned. He scanned sky above and behind, looking for dark specks meaning German fighters diving from altitude. 56th Fighter Group had 48 P-47s spread across sky in loose formation, providing top cover for returning B-17 bombers. Mission proceeding normally. Bombers heading home. Fighters scanning for threats. Routine escort mission. Then 16 Focke-Wulf 190s dove from 25,000 feet, coming from sun, coming fast. Perfect tactical position. Johnson's hands moved automatically. Keyed radio. Started warning transmission. Focke-Wulf's guns answered before his words formed. First burst hit everything. Canopy shattered into 1,000 fragments. Hydraulic lines severed, spraying fluid across cockpit. Oxygen system destroyed. Electrical system damaged. Flight controls partially disabled. Fire ignited somewhere behind cockpit. P-47 snapped into inverted spin. Johnson couldn't see through hydraulic fluid coating his face. Couldn't breathe without oxygen mask at 19,000 feet. Couldn't control aircraft with hydraulic system destroyed. Massive fighter tumbled through sky like brick thrown from building. Standard procedure. Bail out. Johnson wedged feet against cockpit frame, pulled on canopy with both hands. Canopy wouldn't budge. Hydraulic system that normally slid back completely destroyed. He was trapped. Fire burned hotter. Metal groaned under stress. Engine screamed at overspeed. Johnson thought about wife Barbara back in the United States. Accepted death. Stopped fighting. Waited for impact. Then fire went out. High-speed spin starved flames of oxygen. They simply died. Johnson's training took over. Kicked left rudder. Pulled back on stick. P-47's nose came up. Spin stopped. Aircraft flying level at 8,000 feet. Half blind from hydraulic fluid. Bleeding from nose and leg. No hydraulic pressure. No oxygen. No way to know how badly damaged aircraft actually was. He pointed battered fighter toward England. Shoved throttle forward. Pratt & Whitney engined, despite everything still running, still producing power. That alone should have been impossible. Cannon shells had hit engine cowling. Machine gun bullets had penetrated engine compartment, yet 2,000 horsepower radial kept turning. Then Focke-Wulf pulled up alongside. German pilot flew formation on Johnson's left wing, close enough Johnson could see him clearly through oil-smeared canopy. German looked at shredded American fighter, looked at Johnson. German pilot appeared surprised Thunderbolt was still flying. Then German positioned himself behind Johnson and opened fire again. Hundreds of 7.92 mm machine gun bullets hammered into Johnson's P-47. German had expended 20 mm cannon ammunition on initial attack. All he had left were 2 cowl-mounted machine guns. But at close range, even machine guns were deadly. Johnson hunched behind armored seatback. Only protection he had left. Noise was unbearable. Metal screaming. Bullets punching through aluminum. Smell of cordite and burning oil filled cockpit. He could hear rounds hitting everywhere. Wings, fuselage. Tail Doherty, Nair, Keel, Ta-di-da. German pilot flew alongside again, looked at Johnson, shook head as if in disbelief, then lined up for another pass. This time, German used technique called spraying, worked rudder back and forth while firing, walking bullets from wingtip to wingtip across Johnson's aircraft. Method designed to ensure hits on every vital system. Nothing should survive this kind of concentrated fire. Johnson's P-47 shuddered under onslaught. More holes appeared in wings, fuselage, tail section. Aircraft should have come apart. Any normal fighter would have disintegrated under this punishment. Should have fallen from sky in pieces. Should have fallen from sky in pieces. It kept flying. German made 3 more passes, each time emptied guns into Thunderbolt. Each time Johnson expected wing to fold or tail to separate or engine to quit or fuel tank to explode. P-47 absorbed punishment and continued toward England. Big Pratt & Whitney radial engine kept running. Wings stayed attached. Control surfaces still responded to Johnson's inputs even without hydraulics. Impossible, but happening. Finally, after 5th attack run, German ran out of ammunition. Pulled up alongside Johnson one last time. Rocked wings. Gesture of respect from one pilot to another. Acknowledgement of Thunderbolt's incredible toughness and Johnson's courage. Then turned back toward France. Johnson nursed crippled P-47 across English Channel. No landing gear hydraulics. No flaps. No radio. Vision still blurred from hydraulic fluid in eyes. Leg bleeding through flight suit. Face burned from cockpit fire. He found RAF Manston, forward operating base on English coast, used for emergency landings. Lined up on grass beside runway, cut engine. Bellied Thunderbolt in without gear. P-47 slid across grass for 400 yards before stopping. Johnson climbed out. Legs barely held him. Ground crew ran toward crashed fighter, expecting to pull dead pilot from wreckage. Found Johnson standing beside aircraft, bleeding but alive. They counted bullet holes later. More than 200. Cannon shells had hit engine cowling, wings, fuselage. Machine gun bullets had penetrated everywhere. Hydraulic lines severed. Oxygen system destroyed. Fuel tanks holed but self-sealing. Control cables shot through but still functional. Electrical system damaged but engine ignition still working. By every rational calculation, aircraft should have broken apart in air. Should have burned. Should have crashed. Johnson should have died. Instead, he was standing there, bleeding, burned, but alive. Republic aviation engineers examined wreckage later that week. Needed understanding how aircraft survived. What they found changed how fighters would be designed for decades. P-47's radial engine configuration proved critical. 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows around central crankcase. Cannon shells and machine gun bullets hit multiple cylinders. Aircraft kept flying because engine could run on remaining cylinders. Liquid-cooled inline engines, used in Mustangs and British fighters, would have leaked coolant and seized immediately. Self-sealing fuel tanks worked exactly as designed. Rubber lining absorbed bullets, swelled to seal holes. Prevented fuel leakage. Prevented fire. Technology proven in combat under most extreme conditions imaginable. Armored seatbacks saved Johnson's life repeatedly. 3 8-inch steel plate behind pilot's seat stopped multiple machine gun bullets that would have killed him. Armor added weight, made aircraft less maneuverable. Also made pilots survivable. Structural strength exceeded specifications. Engineers had designed P-47 with large safety margins. Wings could handle loads far beyond normal flight envelope. Fuselage could absorb battle damage that would break apart lighter fighters. Extra weight that made aircraft less agile also made it nearly indestructible. Control system redundancy meant severed cables didn't necessarily mean lost control. Multiple cable runs, alternative control paths. System designed to degrade gracefully rather than fail catastrophically. These weren't accidents, were deliberate design choices made by Republic aviation engineers who understood that fighters needed surviving combat, not just winning dogfights. Alexander Kartveli, P-47's chief designer, had prioritized pilot survivability over pure performance. That decision, questioned by many during aircraft's development, had just saved Robert Johnson's life. But Johnson's survival was one incident. Question remained. Was P-47 fundamentally flawed, or were pilots simply learning how to employ it properly? Answer came through following months as 56th Fighter Group refined tactics and accumulated experience. Colonel Hubert Zemke drove tactical innovation relentlessly. After Johnson's incident, Zemke held briefings analyzing what worked, what didn't, emphasized lessons, never turn with German fighters, maintain altitude advantage, use dive speed, Support wingmen. Trust aircraft's toughness. Pilots who followed doctrine survived. Pilots who ignored doctrine often didn't. Learning curve was bloody but effective. By late 1943, 56 Fighter Group had transformed from struggling unit into formidable fighting force. Francis Gabreski emerged as Group's leading ace, methodical, disciplined, ruthlessly effective. Understood P-47's capabilities perfectly, never exceeded them, never tried making Thunderbolt into something it wasn't. Used what aircraft could do. Avoided what it couldn't. Gabreski's score climbed steadily through late 1943 and early 1944. 5 kills, 10 kills, 20 kills. Each victory followed same pattern. Altitude advantage, diving attack, single burst, climb away. Never sustained dogfight. Single burst, climb away. Never gave German fighters chance to exploit Thunderbolt's weaknesses. By war's end, Gabreski had 28 confirmed victories, highest score of any American pilot in European theater, excluding those who flew primarily Mustangs. Zemke finished with 17.75 kills. Robert Johnson scored 27 victories, becoming one of America's top aces. These weren't achieved through superior aircraft, were achieved through superior tactics and discipline. P-47 provided toughness and firepower. Pilots provided skill and judgment. But air combat, spectacular as it was, represented only half of Thunderbolt's story. Other half was written at ground level across occupied Europe. Early 1944, Allied planners recognized Luftwaffe was weakening. German fighter strength declining through attrition. American long-range P-51 Mustangs now escorting bombers to Berlin. P-47's short range made it less valuable as bomber escort. But P-47's ruggedness, firepower, and ability to absorb punishment made it ideal for different mission. Ground attack. Ground attack was most dangerous mission in air war. Flying low and slow to attack ground targets exposed aircraft to intense anti-aircraft fire. German flak was deadly. Many aircraft shot down. Many pilots killed. But P-47 could survive hits that would destroy lighter fighters. Radial engine could run with cylinders shot off. Airframe could absorb cannon shells and keep flying. Pilots could belly land damaged Thunderbolts and walk away. American commanders began assigning P-47 units to ground attack missions. Target German transportation networks, railroad locomotives, railroad cars, truck convoys, bridges, supply dumps, anything that moved German supplies toward front lines. P-47 pilots called these missions armed reconnaissance. Fly over occupied territory looking for targets of opportunity. When found, attack. Strafe with 850 caliber machine guns. Bomb with 500-pound bombs under wings. Destroy German logistics systematically. Results were devastating. During 1944 and early 1945, P-47s destroyed approximately 9,000 German locomotives, 86,000 railroad cars, 68,000 trucks, over 6,000 armored vehicles, thousands of other targets. These weren't just claims. These weren't just claims. Were confirmed destructions verified by gun camera footage and reconnaissance photographs. Impact on German logistics was crippling. German army depended on rail transport to move supplies and reinforcements. P-47 attacks on rail network made daytime rail transport suicidal. Germans had to move trains at night, drastically reducing logistical capacity. Truck convoys couldn't move during day without being attacked. German units at front were often short of ammunition, fuel, food because P-47s had destroyed supply columns trying to reach them. German soldiers on ground feared Thunderbolt more than almost any other weapon. Called them Jabos, short for Jag bombers, fighter bombers. When Jabos appeared, German troops dove for cover. 850 calibers could shred truck or column of infantry in seconds. Bombs and rockets could destroy bunkers and fortified positions. No effective defense except hiding until attack was over. Cost was high. Many Thunderbolt pilots shot down by German flak while strafing trains or truck convoys. But Thunderbolt's ruggedness helped. Pilots brought home aircraft with dozens of flak holes. with cylinders shot off engines, with control surfaces partially destroyed. Other fighters wouldn't have made it. Thunderbolt could. Ground attack mission became Thunderbolt's defining role in final year of war. While Mustangs escorted bombers to Berlin, Thunderbolts ranged across occupied Europe, destroying everything German that moved. Wasn't as glamorous as air combat against enemy fighters, didn't produce aces, but won war. Germany couldn't fight effectively when logistics were being destroyed faster than they could rebuild. German commanders understood this. Post-war interrogations revealed German frustration with American air superiority, particularly ground attack aircraft, making movement impossible during daylight. Generaloberst Alfred Jodl, chief of Wehrmacht Operations Staff, stated during Nuremberg trials, Allied air superiority was a decisive factor in our defeat. We could not move supplies, could not move reinforcements, could not move anything during daylight hours without being attacked. American fighter bombers destroyed our logistics systematically. We had ammunition but couldn't deliver it, had fuel but couldn't transport it, had reinforcements but couldn't move them to front. This paralyzed our operations. P-47 Thunderbolt represented majority of American fighter bombers conducting these missions. Massive, tough, reliable, capable of absorbing punishment and completing mission. Recognition came slowly, incompletely. P-51 Mustang received fame and glory. Sleek, beautiful, long-ranged, escorted bombers to Berlin. Shot down German fighters over their own airfields. Perfect propaganda material. P-47 was workman's fighter. Big, heavy, not particularly beautiful, but brought pilots home. Destroyed German logistics. Won war through grinding attrition rather than spectacular victories. Robert Johnson survived war with 27 confirmed victories, returned to United States, married Barbara, woman he thought about when resigning himself to death over France. Lived quiet life, rarely discussed war. Died 1998 at age 78, buried in River Hill Cemetery, now part of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. Obituary mentioned service as fighter pilot. Mentioned 27 kills. Mentioned Distinguished Service Cross. Did not mention 6.26, 1943. Did not mention 200 bullet holes. Did not mention proving P-47 could take punishment that would destroy any other aircraft and still fly home. Colonel Hubert Zemke commanded 56th Fighter Group through most brutal period of air war over Europe. Developed tactics that transformed struggling unit into elite fighter group. Shot down 1775 enemy aircraft personally. Captured by Germans 1030 on 1944. After his P-47 broke up in thunderstorm. Spent remainder of war as POW. Post-war, Zemke wrote extensively about fighter tactics and leadership. Emphasized lessons learned flying P-47. Know your aircraft's strengths and limitations. Develop tactics exploiting strengths. Avoid situations exposing weaknesses. Trust your aircraft. Trust your wingman. Stay disciplined. These principles, refined through combat experience, became foundation of American fighter doctrine for decades. Francis Gabreski survived war with 28 confirmed victories in European theater. Later flew F-86 Sabres in Korea, adding 6.5 more kills. Retired from Air Force as colonel. Died 2002 at age 83, among most respected fighter pilots in American history. At National Museum of United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, P-47 Thunderbolt sits on display. D model, serial number 4549167, nicknamed 5K5, painted to represent aircraft flown by Colonel Joseph Laughlin, commander of 362nd Fighter Group. Placard tells visitors it was one of most produced American fighters of World War II. 15,683 were built. Aircraft had 850 caliber machine guns and could carry 500 pounds of bombs. P-47s destroyed more than 7,000 enemy aircraft during war, more than half in air-to-air combat. What Placard doesn't fully convey is why Thunderbolt succeeded. wasn't because of superior design or advanced technology. German fighters were more advanced in many ways. Focke-Wulf 190 and Messerschmitt 190 were arguably better aircraft on paper. Thunderbolt succeeded because American pilots learned to fight with airplane they had, accepted its limitations, exploited its strengths, developed tactics that negated enemy advantages, stayed aggressive, stayed confident, trusted their aircraft to bring them home. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through engineering breakthroughs or technological superiority, though those help, but through pilots and commanders who see what they have, understand its capabilities, figure out how to use it better than enemy expects. Through mechanics who kept engines running and guns firing. Through training that produced skilled pilots faster than enemy could replace losses. P-47's legacy extended beyond World War II. After war, many countries purchased surplus Thunderbolts. Aircraft served with air forces in Peru, Brazil, Chile, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, China, Iran, Turkey, Portugal, France, Yugoslavia. Some remained in service into 1950s and even early 1960s in South American air forces. Ruggedness and reliability that made it effective in World War II made it valuable for smaller nations that couldn't afford newer jet fighters. In the United States, P-47's design influenced post-war aircraft development. Republic Aviation, company that built Thunderbolt, went on to design F-84 Thunderjet, one of first successful American jet fighters. 84 inherited Thunderbolt's philosophy. Big, rugged, heavily armed, emphasizing survivability and firepower over pure maneuverability. That design philosophy continued through F-105 Thunderchief in 1960s. Lesson of Thunderbolt was that there's more than one way to design successful fighter. You don't have to build lightest, most maneuverable aircraft. You can build big, powerful, tough aircraft and make it work through proper tactics and pilot training. That lesson has been relearned multiple times in aviation history. F-4 Phantom in Vietnam, F-15 Eagle, A-10 Warthog, all followed Thunderbolt's philosophy in different ways. Modern fighter pilots train on principles proven by P-47 in World War II TOW. United States Air Force Fighter Weapons. School teaches case study, examining how 56th Fighter Group transformed tactics to exploit Thunderbolt's strengths while minimizing weaknesses. Principle emphasized. Understand your platform, develop tactics accordingly, maintain discipline under fire. Connection between 1943 fighter tactics and modern air combat doctrine isn't coincidental, is direct lineage. Lessons learned in blood over occupied Europe remain valid in age of stealth fighters and beyond visual range missiles. Aircraft that couldn't turn with enemy fighters, aircraft mocked as too big, too heavy, too slow. Aircraft that many believed would fail in combat. This aircraft became one of most effective American fighters of World War II. Not because it was perfect, because people who flew it and maintained it made it work, because commanders like Zemke developed tactics exploiting its strengths, because pilots like Johnson and Gabreski executed those tactics with discipline and skill, because mechanics kept engines running despite battle damage, because Republic Aviation engineers built aircraft tough enough to absorb punishment and keep flying. P-47 Thunderbolt was never most agile fighter, never fastest fighter at low altitude, never best-looking fighter, but was one of most effective American fighters of World War II. Not because it was perfect, because it was faithful, brought its pilots home. Story of Thunderbolt challenges comfortable narratives about technological superiority, determining military outcomes, reveals that tactics, training, and discipline matter more than raw performance specifications, demonstrates that survivability matters more than agility, shows that innovation comes from operators adapting to reality, not engineers pursuing perfection. Robert Johnson, bleeding and half-blind, flying home in aircraft that should have broken apart. That image captures Thunderbolt's essence, not sleek superiority, Not effortless dominance, but brutal, indomitable toughness. Refusal to quit. Refusal to fail. Aircraft riddled with 200 bullets. Still flying. Still fighting. Still bringing pilot home. That was P-47 Thunderbolt, most underrated American combat plane of World War II. Not because it lacked recognition, because recognition focused on wrong metrics, focused on kills and speed and glamour, missed fundamental truth. Best fighter isn't always fastest or most maneuverable. Sometimes best fighter is one that brings you home when everything says you should be dead. P-47 did that, again and again, for thousands of pilots, through thousands of missions, across European and Pacific theaters. Flying Coffin became legend. Death Trap became teacher. Question Design became proven survivor. Sometimes that's how history works, through blood and metal and impossible survival.